A 20-minute race with James Dorlin effectively just needing to finish to win the championship after a very impressive season in which he's taken 6 race wins. Theo Edgerton, however, was the race winner earlier on in the day, and he is on the grid based on the results of race 1, the man on pole position. The championship is, as I say, all but decided. We do have 1 or 2 guest drivers for the weekend who don't score points, and one of them is Charlie Liddell, who is second on this grid. James Dorlin lining up third, and Dino Zamparelli, another of the non-scoring guests, will start fourth based on what we had earlier on in the day. The back of the grid is a little bit out of order because we've got one car missing by the look of it, and so as the cars are ready to set off on their green flag lap, 1 or 2 drivers, like I say, out of position, but we should be good to go. David Addison and Andy McEwen trackside. We had a very lively first race, Andy, did we not? Despite the fact that conditions were mixed, it kind of helped rather than hindered the racing.
Yeah, I was going to say, perhaps because of the slightly sketchy conditions out there, no one really knew how hard they could push, and it proved quite hard to escape. Ultimately, Theo Edgerton was able to escape to take the win, but James Dorlin, Dino Zamparelli and Charlie Liddell had a brilliant scrap for 2nd, 3rd and 4th, with Dorlin getting rather more involved with those 2 non-point scoring drivers than maybe we thought was sensible. But it was a great race, arguably the race of the season, and what better way to round out the season, hopefully, with another cracker now.
What we don't have, sadly, is Tom Jackson, who has been the main opposition all year to James Dorlin. A bad accident, race-stopping accident at Croft, damaged the car enough to eat into the budget, so we don't have Tom Jackson here, but certainly made up for that. Lots of new drivers all getting a taste of the championship for next year. Theo Edgerton starts on pole position with Charlie Liddell alongside him at the front. James Dorlin starts 3rd, and it's Dino Zamparelli guesting in Archie Hamilton's car, who will start 4th on the grid ahead of Ian Humphries. A 2nd out win earlier on in the day. Pete Chambers for the Jordan Racing team lines up alongside him. Then you've got Nigel Rice and another of the newcomers, Daniel O'Brien. He will start 8th. 9th is Carl Cavers, and Mike Price will go from 10th. He's been in and out of the championship, but the distinctive green car is back. Then John Westbrook ahead of Simon Green, team owner, having a go behind the wheel himself today, with Charles Clark out of the club championship next. The Russian driver Andrei Borodin starting 14th ahead of the other March and Kirara. Charlie March is 15th ahead of Ambrogio Perfetti, this year's AM champion, and Adam Knight at the back of the grid. Why is the AM champion so far back? Because he got turned around at Stowe on the opening lap and had to make a pit stop, so he was badly delayed. And Adam Knight, and he never even got as far as turn 2.
Yes, indeed. 1 or 2 of them, I think, fell foul of the conditions, didn't they, in those early stages. Hopefully Adam has a slightly clearer run this time. Interesting to see how he gets on in that one of a few Veluga racing cars out there. Of course, it was a Veluga car that won the AM class, and dominantly so. Ian Humphries really impressed me, especially the first few laps of that race, going with the race leaders. Whether he can do that now in what are slightly drier conditions, we'll have to wait and see. I also don't know if we ever got to the bottom of what tyres they were on. I think they were on wets. You had an argument for them maybe being on slicks. And honestly, the conditions aren't much different now. It's maybe a bit drier, but it's certainly not bone dry out there, is it?
No, I think you're right. I think I talked myself by the end of it into wets, and one of the things that was tricking us was an errant message about somebody making good progress in the pits. They haven't actually started from the pits, but even from the get-go, people were going for the wetter part of the road to look after the tyres. 20 minutes may not seem a long time, but when you're on that marginal bit of it being a bit too wet and a bit too dry for them to really work properly, or not wet enough and a bit too dry, then it does become very, very lively in how you manage the rubber. Offline, still you can see the damp patches, but it's, for my money, a lot drier than it was at the start of the day. Now, these cars run on Michelin tyres. Many of the other categories that are racing here are on Pirelli rubber, so might be that a different tyre brand works in a different way. One of the things that people have said, certainly in the context of a different tyre and this track surface at Silverstone, is that the circuit retains the moisture for longer. Now, there's barely any temperature, there's certainly no breeze, so anything that has fallen onto the road and made it damp has pretty much stayed there for the last, what, 2.5 hours?
Yeah, exactly. It's you're right, though. It's definitely better than it was, so I think we should see a slightly more standard racing, with James Dorlin now knowing that he's kind of got one hand on the trophy. It's all book decided in his favour now. Maybe we'll well, I don't know, I was going to say maybe we'll see a more aggressive James Dorlin. We saw a pretty aggressive James Dorlin in the previous race, but he's a joy to watch, isn't he, James? And a deserving champion if you can wrap this up. He's obviously a very talented driver in front-wheel drive cars in Clio's a few years ago, then went and was immediately on the pace in the GT4 category of the British GT Championship for Tolman Motorsport. So James, really quick driver, and clearly good at adapting from one car to another, as he's proving later on today.
Absolutely so, and it's also been good to see not just different drivers doing well, but also different teams. We had a maiden win for TCR, Lee Brooks' team, Total Control Racing, earlier on in the day. Now, that's a team that has made its name in Ginettas and Clios, for example, but never Porsches, coming new into Porsches against the Red Lines, the Team Parker Racings, the Rob Boston Racings, the In2 Racings, that are established Porsche teams and going well. So the grid is starting to take shape. It's a little bit out of place at the back. Somebody's being... moving forward to the right grid position there is Charles March for Team Parker Racing. We're good to go as soon as the black car of Adam Knight stops, which it does now. 20 minutes rather than a set number of laps. The green flag is shown. 5-second board to the drivers, and then this final round of the Cayman Islands Porsche Sprint Challenge GB is go. Dreadful start by Liddell, who goes nowhere, nor does Pete Chambers. Everybody thus far has managed to wriggle round, but Charlie Liddell, after a really good drive in race 1 to get himself onto the front of the grid for race 2, has squandered it from the start. The leaders dive round Copse Corner for the first time. Theo Edgerton it is who has made another rocket ship start. James Dorlin, champion-elect, goes second. Dino Zamparelli third, and Nigel Rice on his toes as he tries to get up the order as well. But a good start from Edgerton, and an appalling start, if it was such a thing as a start, from Charlie Liddell.
Well, he wasn't the only one, was he? There were 3 or 4 of them that just never went anywhere, so that was a very, very strange situation at the start, but I believe they've all got going now, although a lot further back than they should be, and some quick drivers there as well. Challenge for the race lead immediately. James Dorlin, as if we weren't sure this was possible, but this is a more racy James Dorlin than we saw from race 1. He's already trying to get up ahead of Theo Edgerton, because he knows if he lets Edgerton get into a rhythm here, Theo has the pace around this track today to pull away. Dorlin's got the outside down into the left hand, that gives him the inside for Club, and that's a really gutsy move. James Dorlin, you can tell he's driving with slightly less pressure on his shoulders now, getting stuck straight in, and he gets the lead away.
That's the job done, isn't it? He's ahead of his championship rival then, and it was always an outside chance anyway for Theo Edgerton. And now Dino Zamparelli comes up to have a go on the inside line, goes second in the red line car. So Dino Zamparelli can't score points. First time out in the championship this weekend, but he would like to round out the season with a race win in something, so he's going after James Dorlin. Even if he gets ahead, James Dorlin can still win the championship because he would be the first point scorer home, but James wants to win this race and win this championship simultaneously. 6 wins have gone his way already. Out of Aintree they come onto Wellington Straight for the first time. Replay of the start. Mike Price went and stopped and went, and others like Pete Chambers, like Charlie Liddell, and there was another one lower down. Was it Andre Borodin? Just didn't go anywhere. Look, Liddell's car doesn't even move an inch.
No, he just never went, so as if maybe the car had stalled already, but marshals were quick with the yellow flags, weren't they? And rightly so, because otherwise that could have been a nasty incident. Yeah, you're right, no sign of life at all. It doesn't go and then stall, it just wasn't going, so something fairly fundamentally went wrong there. He did get going again, and he's running, where is he now? Liddell... of course, first lap hasn't been completed yet. I'll tell you where he is in a moment, probably about 16th or 17th, and with a lot of work to do. And yet again, I'm robbed of this Liddell versus Edgerton battle I was kind of teeing up after race 1, although Theo doesn't seem as quick now as he did this morning.
No, I think he benefited early on, didn't he, from battles going on behind him. Now James Dorlin has asserted himself early on. If James did think early in the race 1 that he needed to get out of the way and bank points and avoid trouble, that compromised him. Here, he's racing in a very different manner, right from the start, trying to get himself up front, and that plan has worked. Charlie Liddell at the end of lap 1 was in 14th place. The others that were slow away, including Pete Chambers, he got through in 16th. So everybody is still circulating, but James Dorlin, then the race leader, dives into Stoke Corner. There is, on the inside line, Ambrosio Perfetti, the AM champion, in the Chupa Chups car. The confectionery magnate comes up to have a go at Carl Cavers, with whom he clashed here on lap 1 of the first race at Stoke Corner. So he's got through safely this time. Ambrosio Perfetti, who'd already won the AM Championship at Croft, in fact, the first race, coming up through the order now, but it's class positions that count. Meantime, Dino Zamparelli is the man, if anybody can now, to take the battle to James Dorlin. It's going to be fascinating to see what Zamparelli could do about the champion-elect.
Well, he's quicker than him so far on this lap. He took 2.5 tenths out of Dorlin in sector 1. He took another half a tenth in sector 2. So it's looking like Zamparelli has the pace in the early. But if he is working that car a little harder now in his pursuit of James Dorlin, then he may struggle towards the end. But you can see the effects of this push on this lap. He's had another purple sector in sector 3. He was another 2.5 tenths quicker than James, and he's now right on the tail of the champion-elect as they come through to the end of lap 2.
So James Dorlin it is up front, but only just. Dino Zamparelli doesn't have to think about a championship, doesn't have to think about points. doesn't have to think about helping a teammate. He's just out for a race win for himself here. Theo Edgerton is the man that goes through third, falling back a little bit now, going really well fourth now in the AM leading car, Ian Humphries, but Dino Zamparelli crosses the timing line, 0.4 of a second back. He's just done the fastest lap of the race as well, a 2 minutes 10.158, and that's a new lap record because on a wetter road it was 2 minutes and 20 earlier on in the day. So much quicker pace now being evinced in race 2 as they come out of the Beckett's S's with Dorlin 0.4 up, Edgerton is third, and then in the AMs, Ian Humphries looking pretty secure at the moment.
Yes, he is. He had a lead at the start of the lap of about 1.4 seconds over Nigel Rice second, Daniel O'Brien third, but Ambrogio Perfetti, of course, the one on the move, having already gained several places from his slightly lowly grid position into fourth position. Fastest lap for Zamparelli then, as he goes after James Dorlin, 2:10.1, as you said. That is, at the moment, about 2 and a bit seconds underneath the GT4 British GT lap record around here. Different tyres, I know, and slightly different specification of car, but that shows the kind of pace these cars are running. This is a proper GT4 racer who competed this championship for a fraction of the budget of other equivalent series. So you can see the appeal, and James Dorlin has really enjoyed his racing in the championship, I know, this year. He'll be even happier now that it looks like he's got the championship wrapped up, but well, Dino Zamparelli was all arms and elbows there, trying to catch the car into Abbey Corner. A huge sideways moment on that curb, which is still evidently a little slippery.
And you can race these cars as well, not only in this championship, but you could go off and do Britcar or 24-hour series races, the old VLN, the Nürburgring long distance series in Germany, or the RCN out there, the Preventing series. You know, there's so many categories that a GT4 Porsche can drop into. So there's a great series here, but there's also plenty of choice for the teams to run them elsewhere. Now, battle is on here. Adam Knight, look, comes up to have a go around the outside of John Westbrook. Adam up from the very, very back of the grid, so he's done more miles already than he had earlier on in the day, and that's Dino Zamparelli, who I think has run wide at Brooklands. The gap has widened, and it looked as though he'd just gone off the road a little bit there. Now, was that a mistake, or was he just using so much width that he put in the wrong side of the curb? Either way, a man that was warned for track limits in the first race of the day has dropped back over a second adrift now, and on that lap, yeah, he cost himself about 0.7 of a second, so a little error maybe, Andy, coming through Brooklands.
Yes, which is not ideal, because he's now got to push even harder to close the gap again, and in doing so will take more life out of his tyres. So the race distance, of course, has been shortened slightly for this second race, just 20 minutes the duration. He has therefore another 2 or 3 fewer laps to complete, but Dino, I'm sure that will be in the back of his mind. This was the moment.
It, yeah.
Too much curve, I think, wasn't it?
Possibly at Brooklands, yeah, and unsettled him and spat him out to the outside line. So yeah, hit the curb, car wobbled a bit, went wide, now he's going to try and play catch-up, so a tiny error, but significant. As I say, 0.7 of a second lost. Good battle raging on here as well, look, because you've got Nigel Rice coming under attack from Daniel O'Brien. This is for second in the AMs, and then behind them is Ambrogio Perfetti. Daniel, first time out in the championship, looking like he's been racing these cars all year.
Yeah, looking really racy, isn't he? Daniel O'Brien, who I think is the brother of Connor, was he not?
That's right, yes.
Who we'll see fighting for the British GT4 Championship a bit later on today. So clearly, being a pretty handy racing driver, runs in the blood in that family, and he's well and truly in the thick of this fight now, sandwiched between 2 of the full season contenders for the AM class. Ambrogio Perfetti, as we've said, already champion, but he really would like to round the season out with a win, and that is not beyond the realms of possibility, because if he can clear these 2 quickly, they're only a couple of seconds down the road from Ian Humphries, the class leader, as it looked like Nigel Rice there had maybe left the door open for Daniel O'Brien, but O'Brien too far back. Yeah, if Perfetti gets on with this, he could yet add another win to what is already a pretty remarkable tally.
Quite so, and this battle is not done yet within the AMs. Second, third, fourth, Nigel Rice, whose Porsche history goes back decades, versus Daniel O'Brien, whose Porsche heritage goes back about 2 hours, and Ambrogio Perfetti, who comes up to have a go on the inside line. This is for third in class. The AM champ then in the red and black car goes through, picks up the place. Perfetti, an experienced driver in modern cars and historics. He was in the Peter Auto 2-litre Porsche Championship, the historic Pre-66 series last year, the kind of historic Porsche Super Cup. So he knows about Porsches, modern and old, driving nicely here, gains 1 place. A class win, though, might be too tall an order. Second, yes, that's on the cards away from Nigel Rice, but can he then go after Ian Humphries?
Well, his fastest lap of the race so far, at 2:12.3, is about 0.4 quicker than Humphries. So I think if he can clear Rice quickly, then maybe. We've still got just over half the race to go, but yeah, I think it will all hinge on how quickly he gets past Nigel Rice, assuming, of course, he can get past Nigel Nigel Rice, which will not be the work of a moment. The head of the field, incidentally, with the new fastest lap for Zamparelli. So Zamparelli on that occasion 3.5 tenths quicker than James Dorlin. The gap now back under a second.
So Zamparelli's got the pace then, as you say, not only that new fastest lap, but also the absolute best within Sector 1 that takes you to the approach to Stoke Corner. The circuit here with 4 sectors on the Grand Prix lap for British purposes. There you've got Rice, Perfetti, and tucked up behind is Daniel O'Brien as they now go into Stoke Corner. So as long as they're squabbling, that is giving a lifeline to Ian Humphries up the road, isn't it? Because he can get on with his race, drive his own lines, not have to think about being delayed. There is the lead battle, and James Dorlin very much on the back foot. Now, how much does he resist? He does not need to be in a fight. Yep, he wants to win the race, I get that, but he doesn't want to then risk not finishing and not scoring points, does he?
Yes, but we know the answer to that question.
We do, I'm afraid, yes.
He's going to make this a very, very wide Porsche Cayman. He will not want Perfetti to get past him, Zamparelli, excuse me, to get past him. And Dino has a good run here out of Aintree, down the Wellington Straight. They'll get a bit of a slipstream in these cars, not as substantial as some others we see racing here this weekend, but it's enough maybe to draw him level. No, not quite. You can see there at the bottom of your screen that his best lap is quicker than James Dorlin's. His previous lap was better than James Dorlin's by about 3 tenths. He naturally has about 3 to 4 tenths in his pocket here against James Dorlin. And so far, David, no sign of Zamparelli's pace fading. It was about this point in race 1 that he started to fall away from the leaders. I
think that was down to tyres, wasn't it? But right now, you're absolutely right, Andy. He is going after James Dorlin. It's a fastest lap of the race set 2 laps ago that is in his favour. He certainly was close enough. The gap 4 tenths again as they come over the timing line. He's not yet been able to make a serious bid. He is pushing though, and so is Perfetti on the back of Rice then. Tightens his line coming out of Woodcote Corner. This is for second place in the AMP category, but Nigel Rice has the run in a straight line. Maybe because he was on the grippier side of the road, he came out of Woodcote just slightly better. So Ambrosio Perfetti has to try and find a way past him once again. We're on lap 6 at the moment, 8.5 minutes of the 20 still to go. Now on a wetter, slower road in the earlier race, they got 9 laps in, and here as they wriggle their way out of Beckett's, then the car up front in this battle pack, Nigel Rice, 5th overall, but it's AMP points at stake here.
Yep, 2nd, 3rd and 4th in the AMP category, absolutely as one then as they go down the Hanger Straight. Perfetti pulls to the inside, as much to defend from O'Brien, I think, as to attack Rice, because Rice, I think, had just enough of a cushion as they turn into the right-hander to hang on. Oh, but then runs wide, coming through the middle of the corner, so never mind, Perfetti is now alongside him, but on the outside line into the braking zone. You can make this move, but Perfetti decides better of it and slots back in again, then gets a kick of oversteer as he tries to get the power down. Not the easiest thing to do, and he's probably overheating the rear tyres a bit doing that as well, which will only compound the issue. Subsequently, he comes off club corner a bit slower than those around him, and so Daniel O'Brien thinks about having to go back at him into the next sequence of corners.
So Perfetti trying to attack, trying to defend simultaneously. 7 minutes to change on the clock. Meantime, up front on this lap, James Dorlin is still being given a hard time by Zamparelli for the overall race lead. Dino Zamparelli, very much a British driver despite his Italian-sounding name. Daniel O'Brien, in the meantime, is all over the back of Perfetti, who is all over the back of Nigel Rice. So you've got the confectionery magnate versus Rice. Very culinary squabble going on there. As up front, James Dorlin feeling the pressure, but he wants to win and have a magnificent 7th, as it were, here. Coming up to the timing line, can he keep Zamparelli behind? It's an important scalp, in a sense, to claim for Dorlin, isn't it? Because Dino Zamparelli has been a regular race winner, a real front runner in Carrera Cup GB, if you like, the senior Porsche category, for more than 1 season. So to defeat him is a big tick in the Dorlin box.
There's a lot of action going on around the front axle of Zamparelli's car. I think he was struggling with understeer in race 1, and they've wound it back now to more of an oversteering setup, but they've possibly gone too far. He's got tons of opposite lock going on going into the high-speed corners. He's taking big bites out of the curbs there through Beckett's. Again, you can see the car wriggling around, so Dino will know what he wants from the car. As you say, he's got many years experience racing this kind of car, and he'll have gone back to the team between races and said, right, it wasn't turning enough, we need to loosen up the rear, we need to give the front a bit more grip, and now the car is a handful, but clearly a little racier than it was this morning, forcing Dorlin there to drive a little defensively through Stoke Corner, and then down the hill they go again. 6 minutes left on the clock, and Dorlin showing no signs here really of shaking off Dino Zamparelli. Closes back in again under braking. As for Charlie Liddell, by the way, he is recovering from that awful start, but only into 9th place at the moment, and not really much chance of catching the pro leaders. So shame that for Charlie. We haven't really seen the best from him.
No, and it's very mysterious as to why he and Chambers just did not move. It wasn't, as we said at the time, that they crept and stalled. They just didn't move, as though they weren't in gear or had the handbrake on or whatever it was. But it was very mysterious that they both had the same problem. Now, Dorlin has a problem. It's called Dino Zamparelli, and he's all over him like a rash. Nose to tail, up to the loop they come. This is lap 7. They're going to get an extra lap in, I think, in this race because it's drier and faster. But James Dorlin accelerates through Aintree. Good corner, that speed building all the time through it, so that Wellington Straight now, rather than Hanger Straight, becomes the faster section of the circuit down to Brooklands, the corner at which Dino Zamparelli made his mistake a couple of laps back. Meantime, over in the twiddly bits, Vale and then Village and the loop, Perfetti is all over the back of Nigel Rice. He's almost up the curb there, but Rice able to defend well, isn't he?
Yeah, only just though. He turned in there, and I think Perfetti had to cut him some slack, otherwise there may have been some contact. Obviously that's cost Perfetti momentum off the corner now, and so Daniel O'Brien senses a chance to sneak back into a podium place. I said earlier on that passing Nigel Rice wasn't going to be the work of a moment for Perfetti, but I didn't realise quite how accurate a statement that was. Rice is sideways coming out of Brooklands, but he parks the car in the middle of the road. That way, whichever way Perfetti goes, he's not going to be able to do it without a fight. And Nigel Rice is standing his ground here. They are now losing time as well, of course. Ian Humphries out in front. Ian Humphries crosses the line at this time to go on to lap number 8. Nearly 6 seconds clear. Perfetti on the inside at Cops Corner. No, wetter side of the road, there's no grip, and that will now compromise his exit.
Indeed so, which means then that Rice emerges about a length further up, and all over the back of Perfetti comes Daniel O'Brien. 4 minutes on the clock and counting. O'Brien has a cheeky look to the inside at Maggots, but that puts him on the outside for Beckett, so no way through there. But all of a sudden, because Perfetti has to think about defending, Nigel Rice has got away, hasn't he? By only 2 or 3 lengths. Part of that was also down to that aborted move at Cops, but Rice, for the moment, has the advantage. Now there's going to be one more lap to ring out of the race at the end of this, and James Dorlin then, for the 8th time, comes through Club Corner. Keep an eye on the clock, just see whether they can squeeze 1 or 2 out of it, but James Dorlin is still the race leader. He is still under attack right there behind him. Dino Zamparelli, now Dino has shadowed, but he's not yet found a way by, and he won't do on the run up to Village, I don't think. As off the road, I'm afraid, stuck in the gravel there is the car of Simon Green. And that is at the Beckett's S's, and he's had quite a moment, Andy, to get there.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I saw a car in that gravel trap, so he's obviously lost it going through Beckett's and deposited himself in the gravel on the right-hand side of the road. Right, Perfetti back with Nigel Rice now, so that bit of ground he lost at the start of the lap that you mentioned, he's now regained. And then promptly loses again going through Abbey because he missed the apex by a country mile. James Dorlin is driving very defensively here to try and keep Zamparelli behind. Dino ambitiously there, goes to the outside. Dorlin saw it coming, carried a bit more speed into the corner, but he's wide now through Luffield. Zamparelli saw a gap on the inside, but that was almost certainly going to end in contact. James Dorlin realised that, backed out of it, opened the steering, but Zamparelli had already aborted his move as well. So in the end, they stay exactly where they are, but Zamparelli, I sense, getting a bit frustrated now. He's got 2 laps left to do this. He clearly feels he's quicker than Dorlin, and the lap times consistently are proving that point, but he just can't get past. James Dorlin is a real racer. He's a hard man to overtake, and no one, of course, can overtake into this yellow flag zone at Beckett's.
With that wave yellow, meaning you can't overtake, be prepared to stop even. So through Beckett's comes James Dorlin. It's going to be interesting this to see what the officials do, because they're going to be about 10 seconds short of the end of the race, aren't they? So a flying lap is 2 minutes and 10 for the sake of 10 seconds. Could it be an early checkered flag to bring the timetable back on track? Let us wait and see. Be a real kick if it were for Zamparelli, because he can build up to that. But down towards Stowe Corner they come. Now Zamparelli makes a move and he's going to go through. The gap was there for him. James Dorlin a bit late, thinks about closing it, but Dino Zamparelli is up alongside. But if Dorlin can stand his ground, he'll have the inside line for the first part of Vale. It'll be the outside for Club Corner. They are absolutely mirror to mirror down to the braking zone. Zamparelli tries the outside line and he has to give way, run out of road, has to back out of it, and he's not near enough to then pounce once more going into Club. So James Dorlin might have closed the door a bit late at Stowe, but that was good racecraft down through Vale. Yeah, well, James Dorlin gave Dino Zamparelli a pretty clear choice there. You're more than welcome to stand your ground on the outside, but we will have an accident if you do so, because Dorlin was going to carry all the speed in the world into Vale, and he did, and he kept Zamparelli behind, but for how much longer? Because Dino is back alongside again into Village. That's the outside line. He'll concentrate instead on working on a good exit, not even really from that corner, but from this corner, through the loop and out through Aintree, which is a flat-out left-hander, but only
just really. As you said, it's a pretty deceptively tricky left-hander, that, especially when they insist on riding that curve on the inside line. They are absolutely nose to tail. Down to Brooklands. This is another chance maybe for Zamparelli to throw one up the inside, which he thinks about doing, but Dorlin moves over to cover. He's leaving these defensive moves rather late, but they are working.
They are. Now, does he get another lap in which to challenge? Let's see. The road much drier at Luffield, so perhaps that outside line not as relevant as it was in the first race. Up towards the timing line they come. I think they are going to get the full distance in, so one more lap to go. James Dorlin leads. There's a championship on the line for him. He's as good as won that, but he wants the race win. Dino Zamparelli is right up behind him. A distant third is Theo Edgerton. Meantime, Perfetti has got himself up past Nigel Rice. Daniel O'Brien wants to buy into this as well as they come into Luffield now. Nigel Rice looks for the inside, can't find it, looks for the outside, wrong line, tries to defend from O'Brien. There's a lot going on here as the three of them now fire out of Luffield up towards the line.
At long last then, Perfetti has gone through into second place in the AM class, and now it's a case of whether Nigel Rice can hang on to the podium, or is Daniel O'Brien going to be able to get through? O'Brien missed out on the podium to Nigel Rice in the previous race by only one position, so he will want to try and redress that situation if he can. Good run out of Copse Corner will help him in that matter, as the leaders are down at Stowe Corner. Zamparelli again thinks about the inside. The trouble is he's kind of shown his hand now, hasn't he? He's had a few of these lunges over the last lap or so. Dorlin knows they're coming. He's already proven that he's more than capable of fending them off, so if Zamparelli's going to do this with only half a lap to go now, he'll have to get inventive.
Nose to tail at the end of Vale, so the gap comes down there. The move starts now. Wherever that move is going to come, it starts here. Zamparelli accelerates out of club. He can't afford to lose a tenth now before whichever corner he thinks is where the opportunity will come. He jinks out of the slipstream, has a look to the inside at Abbey, but you've got to be oh so committed to have a go there. You might get past a back marker, but not necessarily for the race lead on the last lap of the season against the guy that's going for the championship. Now Zamparelli to the outside line into Village. This could be a good move if he can get up the inside into the loop. Wide in, what about tight out? Dorlin parks the car on the apex virtually, doesn't he? And there's no chance for Zamparelli to do it there. On to Wellington Straight, so that's two opportunities gone. He really only got Brooklands and Luffield to go now. Zamparelli in the wheel tracks of Dorlin. James is going to win the championship because he's ahead of Theo Edgerton. That is a given. The race win, though, is certainly up for grabs. Zamparelli, if he can go around the outside here, would have the inside for Luffield, but that doesn't work for him. James Dorlin still under pressure, hugs the inside line into Luffield. Now, Dino, get the inside line if you can. Nose to tail off Luffield, heading up towards the line, but James Dorlin covers it. He's going to come through to win the race, to win the championship. Checkered flag for James Dorlin to win for a seventh time this year in the Porsche Sprint Challenge GB, and he wins the championship as well. The gap at the flag point, 1.92 of a second over Dino Zamparelli. Brilliant way, Andy, to finish the championship.
Yeah, that was magnificent, wasn't it? Here comes Ian Humphries then to take a double AM victory, and that's, I think, going to be the first time that he's doubled up on any given weekend. And through comes Ian Humphries then, the AM victor, once more here at Silverstone, and again really did a lot of that work in the early stages, escaping from everybody else. It is going to be Ambrogio Perfetti in second place, a fighting second place from Nigel Rice, Daniel O'Brien and Charlie Liddell. And then who is next? It is going to be Adam Knight. Not a bad recovery that from the back of the grid to snatch a top 5 in the AM class, just about beating Charles Clark there as he came across the start-finish line. The rest of them then filing through behind. Cole Cavers ahead of Westbrook, ahead of Pete Chambers. But it's James Dorlin who hangs on to the win, and arguably one of the hardest fought victories of the season so far, that or season in total for James Dorlin, who celebrates with some with a display of car control as he comes out of Stowe Corner. So James Dorlin then the race winner. Let's confirm that result for you now. Dorlin from Zamparelli the top 2, with Theo Edgerton third. Ian Humphries fourth, wins the AM class once again ahead of Ambrogio Perfetti. Nigel Rice, Daniel O'Brien, Charlie Liddell after that stall, whatever happened at the start, ends up only 8th ahead of Adam Knight, and then Clark, Cavers, Westbrook, Pete Chambers, Mike Price and March at the back of the field. So that is the result of the Cayman Islands Porsche Sprint Challenge GB, the final race of the 2020 season, and what a brilliant debut season it was in some pretty tough conditions this year to launch a new championship. But a 17-car grid, almost a 17-car grid, launched off the line at the start of the last race. Not all of them got away actually at the first attempt. Charlie Liddell most notably from the front of the grid, second on the grid he was, potential race winner definitely, but didn't go anywhere at the start and fell right to the back of the field. The AM battle was immediately fairly intense, with Nigel Rice and Ian Humphries running side by side through Copse, with James Humphries that managed to get himself back out into the lead. James Dorlin muscled his way past Theo Edgerton halfway around the first lap, and as Edgerton didn't seem to have the pace in race 2, Zamparelli was able to go through as well, whilst behind Ambrogio Perfetti was working his way through the order after an off in race 1. He'd started at the back but came through nicely. The battle at the front was really intense. Dino Zamparelli reeled in James Dorlin, had a moment at Brooklands, and on multiple occasions tried to find a way past the champion-elect, but to no avail. James Dorlin had some fantastic defensive moves in his locker and was able to retain the race lead. That is how the 56 car of Green ended up. Simon Green ended up in the gravel trap, but it was James Dorlin that came through to confirm his place as the 2020 Cayman Islands Porsche Sprint Challenge Great Britain champion.